In the last clip, we focused on what happens when everything goes right. Well, that is not exactly reality, is it? Well, we can make sure that that is valid by now working on the sad path. What happens when things go wrong? So this first block you can consider to be, well, acceptance test. It should always work. When everything goes right, you want to make sure your app always behaves exactly the way it's supposed to. Well, in this second block here, what we're going to do is throw stones at that. So what happens if, in other words, our application is invalid if email is 4 characters or less? And so this, of course, should not be valid. So we are going to set our valid app.email to d at d, and that is going to violate our length. For those of you familiar with Mocha and Node, and you're looking at this saying, what are you doing? Yes, this is not exactly a good thing to do. I will talk about why in just a second. For now, I just want to see if this will work. So here I've just reset the email on our valid app, and I want to assert that the email is not valid. So let's do that, and our test passes. It might not look like there's a problem here, but I violated one of the things that I said not to do above, and that specifically is I am changing a test variable from a different block, and that can have disastrous consequences later on. In fact, you will see me back myself into the woods in a later module. For now, what I want to do is I want to not do this. I want to make sure that I have variables specific to each block here. In this case, I'm just going to drop it right inside of my spec. I don't need a before block for this because this is a simple test all in of itself. So here I'm just going to create a brand new application with a bad email and make sure that it's not valid. And in fact, it is not. Our validators expect the email to be greater than 3 characters. Okay, the next thing I want to do is I want to make sure it has an @ sigil in it. And for this, I'm going to once again create a new application. And there's a number of ways I could format these tests, but it's simplest inside of here to just create a brand new application for each expectation. But didn't I just say you should have a variable specific to each describe block that's under test? Well, I did. But in this case, my golden rule of simplicity trumps everything. Well, I'm going to let that have free reign. It's just easier to create a brand new membership application each time. That way, I can read it clearly and I can be certain that it is going to have its own instance that is under test. So that's what I've done. And as you can see, I've got a lot of tests here. And I'm testing each one of the validators. Let's take a look at how it runs. And it runs really well. So look at this. The application is valid if, and you can read it really well. It's invalid if, and it basically shows the opposite of what's above it. Which brings something to mind. Why do I need both test cases? It's almost like saying black is not white and white is not black. Hey, both those things are true. Well, really, that's kind of ridiculous. It's also a bit redundant. So let's just go up here and have our blanket validator tested and make sure that the application's valid in that case. And you can see it is valid. And by definition, if the email or height or age or weight or anything other than valid, it's going to be invalid. So in this case, we've covered everything nicely. No code is the best code, and that includes tests.